Oh, it didn't refresh. Good.
There you go.
Hello. Darren Eliker, star of Black Dahlia, should have
Hello.
received top billing, in my opinion, um, for the
Well,
absolute.
you got to sell the games.
I think someone said it's union rules that you have to put like the top actors or
Yeah,
whatever at the top. But anyway, at least you got on the front box,
I did.
front of the yes, deservedly so. So yeah, I see you've got the box in the background there.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah. Just dug that up. This is how when the days when we used to have to go and buy games that looked like this,
Yes.
And, yeah, they would come in a case like this, and you used to have to. It had 8 CDs that you would have to load in, and sometimes you'd be in the middle of playing something, and all of a sudden you get that weird message about, okay, you have to stop and insert disc number 5.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and Black Dahlia was huge. I believe it is the only CD-ROM game that actually came on 8 CDs. The closest you got was a couple, like the X-Files game was on 7 CDs, but Black Dahlia was massive.
yeah, it was what the common thing that you would see in some of the advertisement blurbs and stuff like that would say. It was sprawling, and it was indeed a sprawling tale.
Yes, it was. So you've actually played the game.
I have, yeah. Unlike my buddy Dave, I'm a gamer, so
Oh,
yeah, and it's always just kind of been part of me. I remember back when I was a kid, and I remember spending a winter, shoveling driveways and stuff, and mowing lawns in the summer to save up to buy my first Atari game system.
nice.
And
Wow.
and then when I got into college and was pursuing acting and everything, it just kind of all went by the side. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of done. But then after graduating, all of a sudden I started to pay attention to it because I was doing a lot of voiceover work for commercial advertising, and also voice acting. Because this was a time before the democratization of things like we're doing right now, where everybody has the ability through computer technology to be able to get on and talk with each other. This was a day and age when you used to have to go into a studio, and you were localized in your city, wherever you were, and the places that were putting those projects together. And so you would have to go into these places, and we had some of those, and I was doing a lot of work where I was hired in as a voice actor to go into a place, including the Take Two office in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And I had begun going in there just for a couple of other games to do voiceover work. But then this came along. And so the only way in which I realized at that point how far games had progressed during the years that I had been involved in education. And I was like, wow, these are really serious stories. And there are serious stories that require performance. But before we had gotten there with the voiceover, where I think I started with a game called Iron and Blood, and then there was, I forget, there were 2 of them. I forget what they were. The only way that I could hear the work, because we didn't have things like this, where you can resurrect a game and put a retrospective together and actually watch the whole thing and update it like you have so graciously done with HD. But I would have to go into Blockbuster. Remember when they had brick and
Oh
mortar
yeah.
stores? I'd have to go in there and I'd have to rent a PlayStation. And in order to play the game through to get to the character, I'm like, oh, that's me.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, yeah. But I do have my Black Dahlia box. I should have gotten it out. I have the 8 CDs. It was the European version didn't come with the fancy flip case that you just showed. It just came with 8 CDs in little plastic sleeves just chucked into the box. So you guys I went on eBay and got the fancy version shortly thereafter.
Nice.
Yeah. So hey, so Take Two already knew that you had a good voice, and then they must have realized you had a face as well.
Well, it was funny because after I had graduated, I was around here for about 6 months, and I'd gone back to New Jersey South Jersey, where I'm from, and was commuting up where I was represented in New York by a couple of agencies. It was a slow time, and I thought, you know what? Rather than because my friends all had their living arrangements and stuff like that, and this was at a time when you used to have. I remember there was a service we called Bells Are Ringing. And so if you were a performer, you were represented by an agency, somebody might see your picture, call you in for an audition, maybe a commercial, maybe a movie or something along those lines of play. And you used to have a service in New York that allowed you to have a 212 phone number. And so there was this service that you'd have to call in from your phone to this, to get your messages for the day, to all appear like you were localized in New York. And so after a year, I was like, you know what? I know people back in Pittsburgh. I know where I can at least begin to build a resume and get creative and everything. And so I came back here, and looking for a survival job, I fell into radio production, which I had then, it was my survival job, and it lasted like 31 years. And during that time, it would allow me to go out where I signed on with a local agency here, and they began to really work with me for voiceover work. And then the acting work began to come along as well with some of the creative agencies around town. And then with plays where theaters would start calling. And that all began to kind of coalesce and happen at the same time. And so the voiceover work began, and I found myself out there. And then, yes, it morphed into other things where, we're kind of multidisciplinary. And so we do a variety of things with a combination of voiceover work and on camera work. Some of it you never see because it's industrial type work that goes between businesses. And then things like this come along, and you're like, wow. And it's really exciting and a lot of fun. So,
yeah. Oh, so you've been in those company training videos where someone comes along and says, "I don't know how to work this thing," and the manager slaps him across the face and goes, "You dumb, you're supposed to do this and this. Otherwise,
well, that's
someone
how
gets
I actually
killed."
went with the agency that I'm with here, because one of the women who was at an audition I had been at for a local company that produced those kinds of things was like, "Yeah, I'm with this agency," and they had formed during the year while I was away, and then I went to see them, and I was like, "Oh, this was somebody who used to work at another place that I used to go in for auditions and things of that nature." So we hit it off right away, and that's how that representation began.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
Yeah, so it was very diverse and always active, and life just started to happen, and so here's where I am.
Here's where we are. So your audition process for Black Dahlia must have been a bit different than, for instance, David's audition. He said it was more like getting called in, normal movie casting process.
Because he had already been beginning to be established out in the California area. I believe he was San Diego for a while, and of course, LA being close to there. And so, when you're in those positions, the call will go out, and those roles will be filled in those ways. But because the project was generated here and Take-Two's Latrobe office was nearby, this became a hub. A lot of times it's flipped, where you've got, say it's a movie, TV show, series, something like that, where those things are usually casting in places like New York, Chicago, LA, but then they may come here because there's a tax incentive for them to be able to film where we are. And so the local casting agencies then begin to fill the lower tier parts and roles and things of that nature, background and those kinds of things.
That's why the X-Files were shot in Vancouver, and all that stuff. So you got local actors coming in to play bit parts and such. But you did not get a bit part in this game.
No, and it was fun going in, and Nancy Mosser was the casting agent who was handling this particular project. And I remember going in. I think there were two. I think we did one, and they seemed to really kind of be energized by that. And then I think they had me back in just for another look with, for final looks on something with one of the producers who may not have been there during the first run through. So, and I that may have been that Eric Tro came in during the second one, and the first one might have been a producer, and Patrick Freeman, who was the writer, and they just seemed really to be energized and excited about it, and it was a lot of fun doing the audition, and then to be given the role. It was just a wonderful thing. So.
Well, was it still wonderful when you got the shooting script for what must have been like 1 million pages, and you're
It
in
was like
every scene?
it was literally like about a 442 page script. I think Patrick will have to correct me on that, but I believe it was that. And you realize you're on every one.
Yes.
So it's I mean, you figure your average film script can be, around 120, or slightly around that ballpark, where you're clocking it at around a couple of hours or something. But this is, and you're not on every page because of your co-stars and things of that nature. But this one, it's all you. And so except for very rare occurrences like, where, David is ensconced in his office with his secretary or something like that.
Well, you still come in and catch them in the act, which is actually one of my favorite scenes.
It is. Yeah, it's very funny. And he brought a lot to that role. And so, anyway, it was an immense undertaking, but also very exciting at that point, because the wonderful thing about that is that you get to kind of establish the whole arc of a character from beginning to end. Now that you're going to shoot it that way, and that becomes the key thing, because you're going to do it all out of order, and then it's going to be assembled in post like a Rubik's cube, and then you're going to get all of that, and you need to have that arc of the whole thing. And in this case, Jim goes from being a very green, very new agent for the COI, which became the predecessor to the CIA in America, and then all the way through to this more jaded person who has seen a lot of stuff and has a little bit of world weariness in a very short span of his career. And because you're going from the end of the script to the beginning, and a lot of those changes. It's like any film, for production reasons and things of that nature. It will be shot out of sequence, and then assembled that way. So everything has to work, where you're constantly changing between your older self and your younger self, your grizzled self and your naive self, and put that all together. But those changes can all happen within a day.
Yeah. And that's interesting. You just preempted one of the questions I had on my list, which I thought were very clever. The character arc, and whether or not that was shot chronologically, which I guess it wasn't.
No, the first thing that we shot, believe it or not, were the torch scenes. So it was the underground going into the subterranean, the Indiana Jonesy kind of portion of it. Yes. And one of the first shots was the pushing of one of the crypts open, and that looking down in and seeing what's inside. That was one of the first things that we filmed, and I think we spent about maybe 2 or 3 days just doing that, walking and looking, and then everything else kind of went from there as we began to be a little bit more complex and bring in the other characters. And some of it was a little linear in this, like with Dan Frez's scenes in the beginning, when Jim is first hired at the office. That's his boss. And those scenes would be filmed. But to that point, the questions, obviously, this is kind of like a choose your own adventure sort of thing. And so a lot of those questions, and there may be 2, 3, 5 questions with multiple parts in there as you interview somebody, and then you'll come back later for another one. And so there's filming all of those things in a way that can make sense if the player comes at it from asking a different question. Maybe they don't find the answer that the game needs you to find, and so you wind up going away to another location and then coming back. All of those things have to be sort of mentally logged and tracked throughout because of the possibilities that it involves.
Yeah, there's even that one scene where Marillo wakes Pearson up and goes, Fett's asleep on the job again. And you start questioning him about the shooter at the, the Nazi shooter at the warehouse. And you can go multiple paths on that. You can either just blow him off, or you can be truthful with him. It doesn't really impact the game all that much, but it does give nuances to Pearson's character that
Mhm.
that you as the player feel like you're shaping. But it must be kind of weird as the lead actor to go, okay, now I'm helpful, now I'm a douchebag, and just pull it back and forth.
Yes, turn up the douche.
Turn up
Yes.
the douche. Well, I gotta say, Pearson being the main player protagonist, he's always in you know, first of all, as the player, you kind of want to feel you're in control of him, but he also has to be his own man, so to speak. And it's interesting you mentioned the character arc where he goes from this slightly, well, not slightly, very green new agent to at one point just becoming a vendetta driven man with a hat, so to speak. And it's I don't know, my question's kind of trailing off.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
how do you?
the
Sorry.
whole thing that like with Winslow, because there's those initial things that happen in the local bar where they meet, and there's that sense of naive trust. Yeah, he's odd. He's a little weird, quirky, maybe a you're not really sure what to make of him, but you don't necessarily take him too seriously at first. And then there's that pivot where the betrayal occurs, and you realize what you're dealing with,
Yeah,
and it takes off in a completely different direction. And so with Jim, there's just sort of an earnestness and a desire to really solve a local murder case that does not seem to be tied into something bigger, which were actual murder cases, which happened in Cleveland in the 1940s, the famous torso killings, and then to try to tie that somehow into the Black Dahlia murder case in L.A. and to make some supernatural thing have that element going on, and
yeah,
was something.
yeah. And I think what I was trying to get at was Pearson ends up this really driven, really he wants to get at this Dahlia. It becomes his life mission. But as it turns out near the end, Winslow's just been dragging him along on a string. You think you're hunting Winslow, but really he's just pulling you in. So it at what point does that switch sort of flip in Pearson's head that I'm not actually the hunter, I'm the hunted?
Probably during the confrontation that happens with Von Hess.
Yeah.
I want to say it's around there. And at that point, it's like a sudden switch where the light bulb goes off and you realize who the real person is here. But then it becomes that hunt. You're trying to get to the gemstone, to the Black Dahlia, and the pursuit with the train ride and
Hmm.
Alice and those events that unfold, and you realize just how big that this thing has gone. And at that point, and then there's the thing where you're looking through the telescope and you realize, okay, he's over there, waving you in, and at that point, it becomes this real cat and mouse thing where he knows you're on the way,
Yeah.
and it takes a whole other level. It goes to a whole different level.
Yeah, and I love it. And especially the final scene. We might as well spoil it. The final scene where David's got the whole makeup thing going, flips his eyeball out, was your reaction shot is so priceless. It really is like, Jesus motherfucking Christ. And were you like live reacting to this, or was it just like the camera on you and
It was
go,
probably
okay.
all the special effects of the the condom effect on the eyeball there.
Yeah. It's like the director just pointing a camera at you and going, the dude
Yeah,
just tore out his eyeball, react.
yeah, yeah. And I got to watch a lot of that. Funny little thing, because we were all obviously it's all blue screen. It's really easy to lose your perspective because everything's all chroma blue, and from the boxes that we would sit on that would turn into chairs, or the ones that would turn into desks and things like that. Everything was blue. So we go in through this portal, pursuing Winslow, and there's this run up to the portal and a jump off the box, and I lost my sense of depth. And when I launched off the box, I wasn't really looking any longer where I was going, and the next thing I know, I slam into the back wall, the chroma blue wall. But because I'm covered in blood and soot and ash, I left this mark. It was like it was like a police scene, crime scene. It was my outline shape
Mm.
that was left on the wall. And because everything has to be, carefully, just so everything keys when it's digitized, they had to take time to repaint the wall and wait for it all to dry before they could go through shooting again.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of like the trippy dream sequences and all that, and you're just reacting to absolutely nothing. Is that
yeah,
like uh how do you tap into that? I know you have a background in theater, for instance. Is there something you can
I
tap into there?
I've always had a very active imagination, and so the audio stuff has led into now I'm doing a lot of acting behind the microphone, so I do a lot of audiobook narration and production, and so I've always had a very active imagination when it comes to beginning with a script, and then being able to take that off here. And so where it served me here was just even though you're seeing all those things, I mean and we go through this through our training as well, where you're imagining what you're seeing, what are you hearing, where are you, and pulling on things that are in your real life and be able to put them in a place mentally that you can respond to those things. So that's just where it comes from. Some people don't think they don't um, think with images. Like my wife, for instance, she likes to say she doesn't have as much of an active imagination, um, but reading those things, she can get them, but she doesn't always picture them. So
Mm.
sometimes if something's like a horror. Has a horror element or something like that, she can much more easily read it than she could watch it because the visuals, then when it's presented to her, will affect her differently. But
Yeah.
when she's just reading it, so for me though, reading it has always had this energy and this pull to visually carry me, on an adventure. And it may
Yeah.
even go back to those big stories that we all read as kids, like Lord of the Rings and things of that nature, where, you're going off the road and we're going on an adventure. And that element of it, the beginnings of stories and things like that, that help imaginatively pull you along,
Yeah.
really come into play in something like this.
So imagining stuff like opening sarcophaguses
Yeah.
and carry. I suppose the torch might have helped a bit, and the Indiana Jones hat might have helped a
Well,
little bit,
yeah,
but
you can't fake fire. I mean, well, you can these days, but we weren't then.
no.
And so we would often go through periods where we'd have to light and relight the torch. But we're using live fire at that point. And those kind of things, the costuming, the makeup, the hair, all that, those things are real and those we can see and react to, but the rest of the world we can't. So we don't know if we're, when we're walking on something, how, where's the drop? Where's it
Mm.
going off? Where's our objective? What do we see here? All of those kinds of things. And we have
I,
to pull that and create that mentally because we can't see any of it. It's not represented in a set, like when you're on a set for a play or even a partial build of a set for a film. Certain things can actually be there and double as something, even though, it's not 100% of the case. There's CGI that will be done and things of that nature. But when it came to this, we were working from ground zero. And it was really like sometimes you're looking at little, dots. So this is common with mocap and stuff like that, where you're looking at things that will place your eye lines at certain, uh, places. Because in this case, the digitizing that Henry Barrasso would have to do to put us into that 3D world had to be very, very precise. The camera angles all had to be very precise in order for it to match. Because unlike today, where we're doing performance capture in video games, like Red Dead Redemption, um, we're doing we're doing a digitization. So we have to film it, and it has to be able to line up with a maybe half-built 3D environment that will be roughed in, that's just roughed in, but will be fleshed out later on. And
yeah.
those things all have to match.
Yeah, and Black Dahlia is very interesting in that regard because it and I'm not saying this just because we're doing interviews about Black Dahlia. It does have some of the best compositing of any FMV game I've ever played. There's so many camera movements
Mhm.
and zooms and pans and stuff like which I know for the time must have been absolute hell on the VFX artists, because motion control cameras were not readily
Sure.
affordable at the time. So all of that had to be done, I'm assuming, manually. Like you have a
Yes, and
camera pan, and then so you have to hit your marks pretty damn
you do, and
clear.
it has to be there when the edit is done and when all of that goes. And it's a long process. It's not something that happens within a few minutes' time. I mean, this is a long rendering process
Yeah,
that would happen. And I remember, it would be hours, sometimes a full day of rendering work that Hank would have to do
yeah.
in putting those things together.
Yeah, and if the camera wobbles even just a slight bit, then the
Mm,
whole render gets thrown off. And
yeah,
yeah, and there are a lot of those. I mean, it's not just like there's another FMV game that I really, really enjoyed, the Pandora Directive, a Tex Murphy game, where they tried to do some pans and some zooms and such, and they could never really figure out how to keep the people's feet from wobbling over the ground and stuff, because
yeah,
they would have to manually composite the movement shots.
sure.
But there's a ton of them in Black Dahlia, and they're really, really well made. But I suppose I mean, if you're doing a scene where the camera's going to pan and zoom and stuff like that, I mean, how much rehearsal time do you get? How badly do
It's
you have to?
fast. It,
Yeah,
it was a fast project because it was 8 weeks overall for filming everything, and part of it was, I think it was part of the 8 weeks. I don't think it was an addition to, but we had some days out in LA at Paramount Studios to shoot the scenes with Dennis Hopper there. So that was a completely different location and some of a different support team once we got there. But uh, yeah, so it happens very quickly. You don't have a lot of time. You need to know your lines before you get in, and you need to know what's happening in the scene and what's happening later in the day, and be prepared for all of those things because they don't have a lot of time to. You got to roll through it
yeah,
and get it done. And our days would start as early as 7 in the morning and go until 5. So you have a full day of shooting each and every day. It just is.
yeah. And some of those scenes are just like you opening doors and you doing like mundane stuff, opening drawers and all that stuff. How do you keep the intensity going
Getting up
when?
on a desk, reaching
Yeah,
in a lamp, finding a bag. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
How do you keep like your motivation, your intensity going when all you're really doing is just
Oh,
opening
it's
desk
it's
drawers?
it's it's fine because you're just, as long as you stay focused on the objective that you're there to accomplish. It's fun, and that kind of enjoyment of the process kind of keeps you going, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, it keeps it alive.
It's, one thing I really enjoyed about Pearson is, even though he's like a very driven man, he's got his wild eyes at the start of the game, and he gets all like almost grisly at the end, and but there are moments of levity, and
Yeah,
my favorite ones are the ones at the post office where he
that's
just
I was gonna. Yeah, I know where
he's just
you're.
absolutely exasperated, and you just you sell the snark so well. Do you have a receipt? Yes. And it cracks me up every time. Was it good to like let the mask drop a little bit
Yeah,
and get into a
yeah,
comedic
because at
sense?
that point, he's much more confident, and there's certain things that he really needs to focus on. He knows where he's going, and he knows what he's looking for. He just doesn't know quite how to get it from the two gentlemen who are involved. These are the scenes where you have a shipping and receiving clerk, and that has received the box that you believe that the gemstone happens to be in, and you need to get that. At least if memory serves, that's what's in the box, or you think it's in the box. So, but you get bogged down. It's like MASH, where they've got all of the rules that you got to fill out the forms to get the forms. So they're making him go through all of these hoops in order to get access to this thing, and they're bouncing back and forth between the shipping and receiving. And Harry O'Toole, who was also with in 12 Monkeys, he did a fantastic job in the one scene where it was just there was just so much humor in his deliveries there, and it was very reminiscent of the kind of character that I remember seeing him do in 12 Monkeys. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And the whole, I'm going to ship this empty box. Where do you want to ship it? Here. That is just right. Another really, really great moment, and I think that's the one that sticks out in most people's heads, if they ever get that far in the game, is in the catacombs, the arrow that goes into the torch, and Pearson just going absolutely wild-eyed.
Yeah.
Again, those little moments of levity in what is otherwise a very serious game.
You have to. I mean, the subject matter is very heavy, and whenever you're doing something heavy like that, you're always wanting to look for where is the humor. It's one of the things that we do to cope with things that are very difficult is that we look for things that at least lighten it and make it bearable. Otherwise, it's just a long, hard slog.
And exactly, and that's one of the reasons why I thought David Wayland's Winslow was such an engaging character, because it would have been very easy to just play him as a
Sure.
complete hateful snub, but he loves
No, no,
everything he
no. And
does.
yeah, he does. He knows how to go for that humor, and that was just very smart, and he just did it so well. And in the beginning, it seems to be like a bumbling kind of thing, or maybe a little smug or a little smarmy, cocky kind of thing. But then it becomes serious, and yet even when it's serious and even when it's deadly, there's that sense of enjoyment that he brought to it, which was really wonderful. So.
Yeah, and he had fantastic things to say about you as well, because it was when he got on set, he felt, okay, this guy is actually really bringing it, was the word he was using. So
Yeah.
so he felt he had to up his game.
Well, yeah, I think when you have a character who is as earnest as Jim, you really need somebody who's going to push back. You really need somebody who's going to throw you off balance. And Dave was perfect for that, and we had a lot of fun doing that. Even when we were sitting there, like getting in makeup and costume and stuff like that, we'd be sitting next to each other and just, kind of either running lines or talking about it and things that we wanted to do. And it was just, it was it was a great, and we've had the opportunity to do it in a number of plays over the years. It's just a very collaborative process, and we enjoy that give and
Yeah.
take.
He said something that I thought was really interesting, was that even though you guys had a good relationship, and in fact, I would go so far as to say you guys have the best on-screen chemistry in the game. Dare I say, even more than Alice and yourself. I'm sorry, but he said he wanted to find some way to push, your personal space, just sort of
Hmm.
unnerve, like disarm you a bit, but also unnerve you a little bit, and
Yes.
that was his key into the character.
Yeah.
How did you like respond to that? I know he was trying to do it intentionally, but was there some conscious effort on your part to play along with that?
The only is to remain sort of allow him to do whatever it is that he's doing and respond to it.
Mm,
So it's not overly planned that way. It's just reacting to whatever it is he's taking the initiative to do. And a lot of times when people are in a more dominant position, if they're wanting to express that dominance, it may come in the form of a touch. Maybe it's a hand on the shoulder or the hand on the small of the back, or it's something along those lines that establishes a little bit of that. And there are moments where Dave does that, and it just catches me off guard. And I think just allowing yourself to respond to that in those situations authentically is what lends that sense of realism to it. It's what we always look for as performers to do in whatever medium we happen to be working. We're
yeah,
looking for those moments of just staying alive and letting the character come to life. Those little things that surprise us. You don't want to manufacture everything going forward. It's one thing to have a strategy, especially if you are the person who is the initiator. You're the character who has that initiator. But if you're the other person, the thing is to allow yourself the reaction, to allow them to do what they do and just respond to it.
yeah,
And I think that creates that. And with Winslow and Pearson, you have all of this time to develop that relationship, which is probably why that chemistry is there. When Amy Dahmer came on the set, the very first thing we shot was the kiss. So it's like, here you are. Hi,
It just
nice to
went
meet
from
you.
0 to 100.
Yeah. And then you back off and you do all the other stuff and the train sequence and things like that. But because of where we were on that day, that was the first thing that was up. And so this is just it's a common out of order, out of chronological order thing that happens when a film or is shot. And that's really how we thought of this. We weren't thinking of it in terms of, okay, we're going to make a game, but it had to come across that way. So it's done in the same fashion. So one thing that, well, I'm sorry, I'll let you complete this thought, but there was something else that I want to, that I think you might want to ask Eric Tro when he comes on with you. But go ahead, please finish your thought.
I'm going to say roll with it because this is all gold, and I've got my list here. You don't have a list. Roll with it, please.
So we had this thing, Eric and I joke about it. It was called Neutral Man. Okay, because you can imagine these days, like if you're playing a game like Skyrim or something like that, you've got all these choices that go into it, or even Red Dead. Is that you've got these choices that you can take. These are potential actions, but they can happen out of sequence. When you're doing that with live people, well, okay, you could ask this question, but what if you ask this other one first, and then how do you go into the next one? And so we always had to begin and end with this neutral position. Yeah, exactly. And it was, you don't want to go dead, but you got to give the player a chance to start and stop before they ask the next thing, because they're going to take a minute to think about what the next thing is that they want to know. And so we would have to start, have the scene, and then no matter what we were doing or how intense that it was, we would have to return to this kind of neutral position, sort of hands down at the sides and neutral expression.
Yeah, and that's something that's really common in FMV games. You see it everywhere, especially in some of Sierra's FMV games, Gabriel Knight 2 and Phantasmagoria. They take it to like extremes. Like they have the characters like stand rigid with arms down the sides, and it's really fun. Like they have an intense scene, and then you just go into like action figure pose. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a bit about your relationship with David Whalen on set, which again is my favorite piece of interaction. I have a little follow up question to that. It's like he went to try and push your buttons a little bit to try and get reactions out of your character. Was there a time when you flipped the tables on him and did something that he didn't expect?
Oh,
there's that Jim Pearson look.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I'm trying to think if we had to, because it's been, gosh, how many decades now
about 3 of them
came out, and I'm trying to reach back and think, did we wait until we got to the LA confrontation before we had to? But Winslow was always, he always had this something else in his hip pocket that he could pull out. So I'm trying to remember if there was ever a moment where he really did want to turn, and I'm not sure that there was.
There's only one scene I can think of where you get like really angry with him, and that's when you ask him where did Penske get moved out, and you like really get cross with him, and he sort of pulls back and goes, "Where did that come from?" It's such a minor little.
Oh yeah, when Penske got so we're still back in the pre-war segment of the game, the first initial part of it.
But you still had the
that was
stubble.
Just the first time where there was a piece of information that he thinks that Winslow should have known concerning Walter Penske, who is played by Dennis Hopper, and when he was removed from the asylum that he was in. But that isn't like a thing where he actively knew what the answer was and was turning the direction of things. That was just one of those momentary, okay, you've been bullshitting me this entire time, so let's have it out here. Let's see what you know and what you don't know, because he doesn't really know that he's in serious pursuit of him until that whole, post-war or wartime section begins. So,
all right, yeah. So moving on. were there any other characters? What other characters? What other actors did you particularly enjoy playing off of? Because you interact with a lot of characters in
Oh
that game.
yeah, there was because the and I'm trying to remember. I'd have to go back to the IMDb to double check on our people who played.
There's a
Uh,
long list.
oh,
I manually copied in that list for the
it
end
is
credits.
huge. I would probably say Michael Bernowski, who is Merlo, um, uh, I believe, and Robert Marinaccio, who is Mr. Finster, Larry John Myers, who was the one character who was being confronted um, with the call girl. Um,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was
The scribe.
yes, that
Yeah,
was a lot of fun. And Larry's great. We had an opportunity a number of years ago to play. I was Werner Heisenberg and he was Niels Bohr in a production of Copenhagen. And it was just it was he's just that kind of guy, and he just has this quality about him. So those scenes, and what's a little bit odd about it, that was one of those scenes where fitting us into that digital world was slightly like there was a little bit of a bend in the scene, and in Larry's, where they had him seated on the bed. I mean, the scene works great, but at the same time, you notice that little digitization bend as they're trying to fit the characters into space. But that was a great scene. But I really like the Maryland stuff. I like the police detective stuff, and sort of that older and winning his trust. I think that was a big part of that one, is being able to win that character's trust, because at first he just thinks Pearson's this young buck and doesn't really know anything and needs to stay out of the way.
yeah.
Uh,
What? But do I
and
need two fads looking over my shoulder? And he
yeah,
gets really intense about it.
yeah. But then he begins to kind of soften as Pearson begins to have some wins, where he's finding some things out that need to be brought to his attention, and they start working together as a pair. And so that was good.
Yeah, I really enjoy the Marilo scenes as well,
Yeah.
and the intensity that he has, and also the fact that he cannot stop making kissy lips at you. It's just the way he talks. Oh, and he's really great. And like I said, the shipping clerks is something that I really enjoyed as well.
Yeah.
But there's just so many bit characters that you have to perform off of. So how do you get a quick read of the actor that you're playing against before you go into a scene?
I think it's like you mean of the performer to work with
Yeah, the
them.
performance. Everyone has like different quirks, different styles, and such, and you have to like really quickly get into their style of performing
I think you
to
look at it
bounce off of them.
as a gift, wherever it is that they happen to be. Both as a performer and just as a person on that given day and what they're bringing to the table. I mean, you're doing your best to give them something to come to. I mean, so you're there knowing your lines and doing all of the work that is necessary for them to come into that environment. So you do it to support them and to allow them to have the moments that they have been given. You just reminded me. I like the scene between the two soldiers in the barracks.
Yeah,
That whole sequence there has a little bit of that element that you're talking about, where somebody comes in and they're just bringing something to the scene, and you roll with it because you look at it like a gift. You try to give them something that is going to allow their day to be a little bit easier in their work and to get into that character. And when they give you something like that, you're like, oh, wow, I'm going to take this and just lean into that, you know.
you sound like a very generous performer. In the sense that you're like the thing that you allow other actors to bounce off of. But here's the thing. I mean, Patrick Freeman said that you were the ace of the show. When you came to set, you knew all the lines and you were super prepared, even though you had the
That's
400 pages of script to work with. So a lot of credit for their performance, I think, should also go to the fact that they had someone like you to bounce off of.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, we all live, when we live in a glass house, we all need each other, and the worst thing that we can do is make somebody else have to work through it because we think we're something super special. It's really about serving the story. and telling that for the people who are going to be either watching it or in this case playing it, to invite them into a world that really seems to feel alive. And so the more that we realize it's so much harder to think that it all rests on you. But if you get the freedom to focus on what you do and let your fellow performers have their moment and bring to the table something that allows them to shine, it's so much easier to share that with them because that's what they're there to do. I don't
Yeah.
see why we can't be supportive of each other in this business.
Maybe you
And I
should
think
write a
most of us are.
manifesto. Yeah, yeah, obviously. Some actors are more difficult than others. I've been told. I'm the type
Well,
of
if you're
person
making
who.
fuck you money, then I guess you can. But you know, I mean,
But
so
I am the type who watches. Back when DVDs were a thing, I'd watch every featurette and director's commentary and
yeah.
all of that stuff. So even like Blade Runner featurettes where they talk about how that person was a bit of a dickhead on set and stuff like that. But it's I mean, being the lead
We
actor,
should do
have you?
that. We could have a watch party for what you cobble together and have everybody together in the same room responding to it.
I would love nothing more than that. Honestly, I really would. But it's a 4-hour movie.
I know.
How are you gonna get people together? We're gonna have to divvy it up into 1 hour at a time.
Bring beer.
There you go. Well, if you're willing to do it, I am definitely willing to be along for the ride. I haven't even looked at my questions list yet. It's just been I've been trying to keep up with you. I imagine the other actors in the game were feeling the same. Um, wow. Oh yeah, here's one. So you're doing a period piece. You're in the 1940s. You get to wear a lot of cool costumes and handle a lot of interesting
Love the
props, like
40s.
the cane and the Dahlia itself. Was there any prop or costume that you kind of wish you'd snuck off with after the wrap?
I like the lighter, the torch, the
They
hat.
probably they would have noticed you carrying the torch off, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
they would have. The hat, the whip.
Oh yeah, the whole Indiana Jones get up.
Yeah, yeah. So those things were fun. Yeah.
Do you know what David said?
No.
He said the boots during the torture scene. He
Oh,
loved the high boots. So, just in general, what was the vibe like on the set? Was it? I mean, you had a very tight shooting schedule, but was it loose and or
it
was it like
was
really
it was
regimented?
it was it was more regimented out of Paramount. It was more relaxed here in Pittsburgh, even though we had to churn through a lot of stuff. But I uh, I would give that to. I mean, you have different teams who are getting used to each other for just a short period of time in LA at Paramount. But when we're back here, you have a lot of people on the crew who have known each other for years. These are people who are able to work well together, who have shot before. Somebody, maybe the cinematographer, the DP, any of these people, they all get each other. There was one of our sound guys, lighting at Letary doing lighting. There wasn't too many projects that Ed Letary would not be on, and everybody knew everybody else. Uh, Shelley Robinson, who ran the production and would coordinate everybody, in spite of the fact that sometimes things could feel pressing when it came to time. There was still that sense of we got this, because everybody's just they're a pro at what they do, and you bring them in that environment, and everybody can just kind of say, yeah, this is tight. We need to get this done, but we've all done this before. So,
Cool.
yeah,
Like what
it made it
was
much.
was there any like unscripted moments that you brought in and people went, you know what, this is too good to cut. We're gonna keep this.
Oh, nothing that's coming off the top of my head at the moment. I'm sorry. I can't
Well,
can't think of anything
you
like
did
that.
have a long script to get through, but
Yes. There was a lot of that. I'm sure there were some things. If I were to watch it again, I'm sure I could come up with something, but nothing that's striking me right now at the moment.
well, there are a few Easter eggs
Oh
with
yeah,
Pearson. Were they?
those are silly. Yeah,
Those are great fun.
this like the
This,
spinning and the falling down. So a lot of the Easter egg things were stuff that just kind of came out, and somebody would say, "Okay, play with this a little bit." Uh, some of it was I don't remember if any of it was just sort of like blooper type stuff that we captured, but some of the Easter eggy thing I remember with this the spinning and the dizziness one. I remember that one where I think it's keyed if you
yeah, if you
just set
spin,
your cursor on the side and spin, and
yeah,
eventually something will trigger that will show me dealing with the dizziness and falling over. I think some of those things might have been not planned, but sort of say, "Oh, it'd be funny if we asked him to do this," and they would ask, and I would play with it. Those
yeah.
kind of moments. Uh,
My
yeah.
favorite one is when you're in the LA hotel room and you're on the phone and you can call up different
Oh,
people. And Pearson making prank calls is just
yeah.
the best. There's one
Yes.
like
Yes.
the best one is, "Hi, is your refrigerator running? You better go catch it." And you just slam the phone down.
Yeah, some of those that was sort of one of those things where we just opened it up and said, let's riff on this. And some people might suggest, okay, why don't you do this? And sometimes it would be something that I came up with, but we were just having fun,
Yeah.
at that moment in time.
I put one of those Easter egg in at the end of the 4-hour cut movie. There's one in the Austrian monastery cellar where you crack open a bottle of wine and just wink at the camera.
Oh,
That's a good one.
yeah, I do
Good.
remember that one now.
Uh, okay, so like I said, I've barely even looked at this thing. I think we got through most of it. Yeah, excellent. Okay, so the well, one thing I didn't put on the list because I assumed, like every other character who works on FMV games, I've seen interviews with Malcolm McDowell, who was in the Wing Commander games, and they asked him, "Have you ever played the game?" And he said, "No." I asked David about this, "Have you ever played the game?" Even though I knew the answer was
Yeah.
going to be no, and it was no. So I was just like, you know what? I'm not even going to ask Darren if he's played the game or not because I'm pretty sure he
Yes.
hasn't. He
Hmm.
has.
Yes.
Uh,
I've always enjoyed games, as I said, but when I realized how far that they had come, and in working on this one, I was like, this stuff has come really far, and I have always liked experiencing and throwing myself into a world and just feeling what that's like. And gaming has always provided that, and the stories and the acting, whether it's voice acting, mocap, or physical performance. I've had friends who were in Red Dead 2, for instance, where they're doing performance capture. The actors are turning in a performance, and it has come so far where you really feel like you are in the world. So yeah, I have been a gamer. I haven't played a lot in recent years. My son has, but I just haven't had as much time as I once did. But I'll take a character if I can depart into another realm. But yes, Arthur Morgan from Red Dead 2 is one. Um, uh, Metal Gear Solid's Snake is one. David Hayter did a lot of work with that character over the years. Um, and Alan Wake is another one, and I love that one because I do a lot of work, as I said, with audiobook recording. The thing that I love about the Alan Wake story is that it's about a writer is not a super soldier. He's just got his wits, and he has limited ammunition. And I just love that whole kind of horror aspect where you are trying to get through that environment and you don't know what's happening to you. Until you do. So that those things like that have really always resonated strongly with me, and I enjoy being able to see and experience what that world might be like. And
yeah.
the gaming has allowed me to do that. I mean, and it's not like I have appreciation for movies um, as well, and the different things that actors bring to those things. But at the same time, it's just a different way of experiencing a story, where you look at a movie and say, "What would I do if I were in that scene?" Well, in an environment like this, it allows you to do that. You get the control over the question that gets asked, or the interaction that you have with a particular character, or the way in which you're going to build your particular character and interact with the world that's around you. and finding out and exploring different things, or trying one action and saying, "What if I had the opportunity to do this again?" Well, you get to do that. So that kind of has its own sense of magic. So there's an appreciation for a theatrical performance, which has the power and ability to bring us all together as actors embody those particular characters, and we see and witness the story that they have to tell us. But at the same time, um, a game has the power to be able to invite us in and allow us to interact with the world, not just watching it or witnessing it, but to change it.
That was beautiful, man. That was I've tried telling people that I feel like games, especially adventure games, stuff like Black Dahlia, stuff like what came before, which kind of faded away in the late '90s and have kind of had a resurgence again. You would not see a large scale production like Black Dahlia being made today, but those types of games, those types of slow pace, and you get to build your sense of place in the story and all that, kind of fell by the wayside when we got all the 3D shooters coming out of the late '90s, and now they've sort of come back again. But I've always tried to tell people that adventure games especially, but gaming in general really is like a third evolution of storytelling. From you got your books and you got your movies and then you got your games, and they're three different mediums. Which is why I find Black Dahlia so fascinating, is because not only does it come on 8 goddamn CDs and has a shitload of video, really well composited, well acted video, which was a rarity for its time, but it also has frighteningly difficult gameplay.
Yes.
Like, absurdly, this is one of the hardest games
I
I've ever
would not
played.
have been able to get through without this.
I've got that one too.
Okay. So,
exactly.
Anybody watching, the puzzles are really hard.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the forward momentum of how that has developed in games is that there's usually a logical connection to the scene, or things that are going on that allow you to be able to have a chance to solve things. It's less random. And some of the ones that are in this one seem to be, they haven't yet kind of crossed that line. They're still somewhat so random that it feels like I can't solve this unless somebody's going to tell me. So I need a walkthrough, or I need a game guide or something like that, because otherwise we're going to be here forever.
Yes. Yes. And some of them, I have to admit, even though you can have fiendish puzzles that are well tied into the story, and Black Dahlia certainly has some of those. And then you have the slightly more outlandish ones, like if you want to get into the back of the Raven room, you have to tap the door 16 times in a certain like, who has time for that?
You'd think but there should be something that clues you that might be something that's there. And I think that a lot of modern puzzles will, at least in games, will suggest those things. So, and I think, that's some of the advancement on that side of it, where there's some kind of connection to the world or to the events that will at least give you a chance that's in your mind, and okay, this is where this fits, and maybe if I try doing this. So that logic is there, feeding you, training you along the way, so that when you get there, there's the possibility you will think of that.
Yeah.
And I think all has to be built in.
And I just find that so bizarrely fascinating with Black Dahlia is they shot 8 CDs worth of really high quality video, and they make it so, because when I played it, I was 18 when the game came out and played it for the first time, and the game lured me in with these really well shot conversations, and you felt like, okay, I'm already getting into the story, this is going to be great, and I got stuck with the phone puzzle. You have to work out phone numbers. And I'm literally on CD 1.
Yeah.
There are 7 discs waiting for me, and I can't get past the first puzzle here. So it just boggles the mind why I can't. I'm so looking forward to asking Steve Glasstetter and Patrick what went through their minds about that one. So that's not really a question. That's just an observation, really.
Yes. Or the stained glass puzzle with the librarian in her.
Oh God.
her space. That one was tough too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you needed to get the answers to those. Those weren't just sidebar things that you could play with. I mean, you had to get the answers to these things to move the story forward.
Yes. And the I mentioned this to David as well. It all has to do with Norse mythology and all that.
Mm.
I'm Danish. I live in Denmark. I live 10 minutes away from a Viking museum that has actual Viking shit in it, and I have never seen as many Norse runes ever in my life as when playing Black Dahlia. I'm sick of Norse runes.
Yes. And
So,
you have one for every facet of the gemstone. There
oh
are
yeah.
many.
Oh
Yeah.
god, the gemstone puzzle is probably the most
Yes.
fiendish of them
Yes.
all. You get that thing is in your inventory the entire game until you get to the sarcophagus and you go, "What the hell am I supposed to do?" Uh, oh, it's great. So I'm glad, and you stuck with it. And you watched it all the way to the end. Um, what how do you think the video portion and the gameplay portion, not just the puzzles in general, but also moving around the environment, how do you think those two went together? Some FMV games completely drop the ball on this, and they have the FMVs almost like a side project to the actual game.
At the time that I was getting into this and wanting to actually play it, to me it was very well put together. But I didn't have a lot of experience prior to that. I had seen some excerpts from, I think it was Ripper, that
Mm,
was a preceding Take Two interactive game with Christopher Walken.
yeah.
Um, and I think in I doing some of those scenes just to kind of see how the gameplay was. It kind of gave me a sense of how these were, but I didn't have a wide variety of experience when it came to that. So but I thought though, I mean, just the ability to point in a particular direction to decide, okay, this is going to move me forward. This is going to turn me here. This is going to move me over to this portion. Oh, I can interact with this. I think a lot of that was actually very well done.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Ripper, one of the reasons why I'm doing all this Black Dahlia stuff is because if you go on YouTube and you search for retro reviews of FMV games, Ripper, everyone has done Ripper. Everyone has
Mhm.
done Ripper. One, I suppose, because Christopher Walken is in it and is absolutely hamming it up in the most glorious walking
In
way
his walking
possible.
way.
Yeah, but Black Dahlia just never gets mentioned. I think it's the two parts of it is that first of all, it's an absolute bitch to get running. It is really hard on a modern
Yeah.
computer, and second, I think the marketing kind of dropped the ball a bit because it was sort of
Yeah.
marketed as a period piece, as a historical drama kind of thing, when it is in fact completely batshit insane by
Yeah.
by the first when the first disc is over and you start having the visions of the hallway melting and all that stuff. I really wish they'd leaned into that more. This game is going to take off. Don't you worry.
Yes. Yeah. 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 It received a nice review when it came out. And I think it was either Entertainment Weekly or Variety. I can't remember which, but it was a 4 out of 4 stars. And, but aside from that, there was not a lot of promotion that had gone on. And I think that, like any game company, you have a vision of where it is that you want to go. You have different departments that will work on different properties, different IPs. And I think that, there was sort of a trend at that point to sort of move away from the FMV game, but you still had one that was really good and you wanted to, to create. But, there's, things like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that, you kind of want to move in that direction and explore that. And so, sometimes things don't always get the attention that maybe they deserve. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really happy to see that you're doing this and to be a part of that. Because yeah, I agree. What's odd is how people will discover it. And I'll get sometimes a notice from an email from somebody who's either in Brazil or Italy or Poland or somebody who's discovered the game and somehow managed to get it to play. I don't know how, because I remember how difficult it was to try to get the thing to run on different computers here, because you had to have, like, at the time it was, you had to get DirectX in order to be able to make it run, and it had to work with this part of your system, and it just seemed a little finicky. So like you said, it was not only just difficult to play, but at the same time, it was difficult to get to run.
Mhm.
And so those things kind of combined, probably for a lot of people who might have enjoyed the story, it didn't translate into somebody becoming, oh, I want to try this. I want to experience what this is like.
No,
So
and also you're right. By 1998, people were getting and that was the problem with FMV games. There were a few real good gems, and then there was a lot of slop. There
yeah,
was a lot of let's just have a rail shooter and tack on some really badly acted FMV, and then everyone sort of had the idea that FMV is just a gimmick. It's
uh-huh.
so and Black Dahlia came right on the tail edge of that. I imagine there were discussions in the Take Two offices like, why don't we just do this in 3D? It's gonna look like shit, but yeah. But I'm really glad they you know did it
Me
as
too.
one of the twilight years of FMV. They went out on what I consider to be a bang.
Yeah,
Honestly, as difficult as the game is, I think it is one of the last true good FMV games to come out of that era.
yeah.
So there's
Yeah,
that,
it
and
was it was great to be there at that time and to get to be a part of it, and to work with all these fabulous people.
And in no small part, I have to say, I'm going to gush a little bit, in no small part because of the main character that's just so charming, so naive to start with, and at some point you just watch him grow.
Yeah.
It's also very very rare for a game of this nature to have like real character growth throughout the game,
Hmm.
and over such a long time span too. Most
Sure.
games take place within like a week or a month or whatever. This game takes like half a decade or something. So having a main character follow you through that story as well acted as Jim Pearson is that was rare. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
um, just to cap things off, is there anything you want to plug? Where people can find you, current projects, anything you want to
I'm easy
tell?
to find. Yeah, I have one of those names that's pretty unique to me, and so all roads kind of do lead to me, if you plug me in a search engine. But if you go to darreneliker.com, you can find ways to connect with me there. Right now, that site is has been dealing with, as I said, a lot of the audiobook work that I do. But there those are the ways that you can find me on every social media, from Facebook to LinkedIn to TikTok and Instagram. Although some of those newer sites are not ones that I'm really good at, you know, but I'm pretty easy to find that way. So yeah, but as far as projects go, I just wrapped a new audiobook project for Janice Whitaker, and that's a dual romance that was done through Brickshop Audio. That'll be coming up out soon. And the let's see, I'll be doing another one for Avery Maxwell coming up. These are I've been doing a lot of romance of late. So I do mystery thriller. I do sci-fi, fantasy, historical fiction, romance, and also some nonfiction. I just had a new one. If you're into nonfiction and AI and robotics, it's called Beast in the Machine, and it's a fabulous exploration of where AI is when it relates to warfare, and the responsibility that we have as human beings in relation to that. So those are the things that I've been working on as far as the audio stuff is going. And
You'll have to forgive my shocked face,
when
but
I
I'm just imagining you going from "and then he kissed her tenderly on the cheek" to "we're all going to die. AI is going to kill us all."
uh, and I've got a role in the Hershey movie that'll be coming out in 2026. It's a small but pivotal part, just a little key scene in there, but it was fun to work on that too. So it just we just take it as it comes. We just finished working on a great show called The Hangman here with Kinetic Theater, and uh, so we'll just see where things go from here.
Excellent. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I got a little flustered there at the start because you just
I didn't
torpedoed
notice.
right through my questions list, and I was just all right. I guess we're rolling. So that was great. I love when I interview people and they just take the helm and go for it. Yeah. So that was great. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for all the support you've given
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
feeble little project of
Thank you for
mine.
doing this, and thank you for shining the spotlight on this again. And I think that there are people who have been fans of the game who will really enjoy the fact that it's out there, and being able to introduce it to new people as well. So
Yeah, that's
uh,
what I hope.
yeah.
That's what I hope. More
Yeah.
people will go, it's not just fedoras and cigarette smoking, although there is a lot of that. But it's also a really good
Yes.
game.
And always
So
having to watch how far your ash is. Okay. You have, is it a quarter? Is it a quarter inch? Is it an inch?
oh
All right. Do
yeah.
we need a new one? Yeah.
Oh God! One of my favorite cigarettes. Oh yeah, God. When you enter the Raven room with Marlowe and you're looking for the book to pull out and reveal the secret there, Pearson goes, "You got to smoke?" "Yeah, I didn't know you smoked." "I do now." And then you walk. He takes like 2 drags off of it, walks into the back room there, and just flicks it off into the distance. And I imagine the director's just going, "Fire hazard." Oh, that's good. That's really good. This is subtle little things in your. That's why I'm gushing, because it's just subtle little things in that performance that just win me over. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyway, I'll let you go again. Thank you, and take care, and stay in touch. We'll
All
see what
right.
we can do about the 4-hour commentary.
There you go.
Thanks
All right.
very much.
Take care. Thank you. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.
That's me, Jim Pearson.